The day a blonde billionaire threw $100 million at my feet and demanded I give up my husband, I knew my quiet life was over. But what she didn't know was that I had my own secrets. My name is Brenda, and this is how I made a mistress eat her own arrogance. If you think money can buy everything, wait until you see what happened when two women went to war over one man. Subscribe now because this story will blow your mind. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd have to fight for her husband. My name is Brenda, and I've always lived a simple life. Nothing fancy, nothing complicated. Just me, my husband Ryan, and our little house on Maple Street where we'd been happy for the past 5 years. Ryan owned a small construction company that he'd built from scratch. He was the kind of man who believed in honest work, fair prices, and treating people right. Every morning he'd kiss me goodbye with paint-stained hands and come home covered in sawdust, telling me stories about his day. We weren't rich, but we had something I thought was more valuable than money. We had each other. Our evenings were spent on the front porch, sharing a cup of coffee and talking about our dreams. Maybe someday we'd expand the business. Maybe we'd travel a little. Maybe we'd start a family. Simple dreams for simple people, or so I thought. Everything changed the day Ryan came home from that business networking event downtown. He seemed different, distracted. When I asked him about it, he just shrugged and said it was nothing special, just some potential clients and contractors talking shop. But something in his voice told me there was more to it. There was this woman there, he mentioned casually while washing his hands at the kitchen sink. Crystal something. She's apparently some big-shot businesswoman, owns a bunch of companies. She was asking about our services for some commercial projects. I felt a little flutter of unease in my stomach, but I pushed it away. Ryan was attractive, successful in his own right, and it wasn't unusual for women to notice him. I trusted my husband completely. What I didn't expect was that this Crystal woman wouldn't just notice him, she'd become completely obsessed with having him. The first time I saw Crystal, I knew we were in trouble. Ryan and I were having lunch at our favorite little cafe downtown when this stunning blonde woman walked in. She was everything I wasn't. Tall, glamorous, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, and she moved like she owned every room she entered. She spotted Ryan immediately and glided over to our table with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "Ryan!" "What a wonderful surprise," she purred, completely ignoring me as if I was invisible. "I was just thinking about those projects we discussed." Ryan looked uncomfortable but polite. "Oh, hi, Crystal. This is my wife, Brenda." He gestured toward me with obvious love in his voice, but Crystal barely glanced in my direction. "Charming," she said dismissively, her eyes already back on Ryan. "I'd love to discuss business with you sometime this week. Perhaps dinner? I know this amazing place downtown." "Actually, we always have dinner together," I interjected, finding my voice. "But Ryan would be happy to meet during business hours." Crystal's smile didn't waver, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "Of course." How traditional? The way she said it made traditional sound like a dirty word. After she left, Ryan seemed troubled. "She's just a potential client, honey." "A big one. This could really help the business." I wanted to believe him, but something about the way Crystal had looked at him made my skin crawl. It wasn't the look of a businesswoman discussing a potential project, it was the look of a hunter sizing up her prey. Over the next few weeks, Crystal seemed to be everywhere we went. At first I thought it was coincidence. After all, we lived in a decent-sized town, but not huge. Running into the same person a few times wasn't impossible. But when she started showing up at places we'd never seen her before, our grocery store, our church, even our neighborhood coffee shop, I knew it wasn't an accident. The humiliation started small. The first incident happened at my workplace. I worked at the community center, helping organize events and programs for local families. It wasn't glamorous work, but I loved it. I loved helping people, seeing kids learn new skills, watching elderly folks find friendship and purpose in our activities. I was setting up chairs for a senior citizen's lunch when Crystal walked in. She was dressed in a white designer suit that probably cost more than I made in 3 months, and she surveyed the humble community center like she was looking at something distasteful. Brenda! She called out sweetly, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. I didn't know you worked here. How charitable of you. The way she emphasized charitable made it clear she thought my job was beneath her notice. Several of the seniors I'd been talking to looked between us curiously. I love my work here, I replied firmly, continuing to arrange chairs. It's rewarding to help people in our community. Oh, I'm sure it is, Crystal said with that same fake smile. It must be nice to have such simple needs. Not everyone can handle the pressure of real business after all. Mrs. Patterson, one of our regular attendees, frowned. Brenda does wonderful work here. She organized the fundraiser that saved our lunch program. Crystal's laugh was like tinkling glass, pretty on the surface but sharp enough to cut. How sweet. Ryan mentioned you have a little job here. I just wanted to see where his wife spends her days. The possessive way she said his wife made my blood boil, but I kept my composure. Is there something I can help you with, Crystal? Oh no, darling. I was just curious. Ryan and I have been discussing some major business deals, and I like to know about the people in his life. She looked around the modest community center with obvious disdain. Though I suppose when you're planning projects worth millions, you don't really have time for this. She left me standing there, burning with embarrassment as curious eyes followed her exit. Mrs. Patterson patted my arm sympathetically. Who was that awful woman? Just someone who thinks money makes her better than everyone else, I muttered, but inside I was seething. The grocery store incident happened a week later. Ryan and I were doing our weekly shopping, comparing prices and using coupons like we always did. We were debating between name brand and generic pasta sauce when Crystal appeared in our aisle like a perfectly dressed nightmare. Oh my goodness, Ryan! She exclaimed loudly enough to turn heads. And Brenda, how lovely to see you again! This time she was wearing a purple silk blouse and diamond earrings that caught the fluorescent lights. Everything about her screamed expensive, from her designer handbag to her perfectly manicured nails. Hi, Crystal, Ryan said politely, but without enthusiasm. How are you? Wonderful, darling. I just flew in from New York this morning, had meetings with some investors about a new hotel chain I'm developing. She positioned herself between Ryan and me, effectively cutting me out of the conversation. The private jet is so convenient for business travel. I grabbed the generic pasta sauce more firmly than necessary and put it in our cart. Crystal's eyes followed the movement, and her smile grew sharper. Oh, you're so practical, Brenda. I admire women who are budget-conscious. Not everyone can afford the finer things in life. She reached past me to grab the most expensive organic sauce on the shelf. I never really look at prices anymore. When you're successful, you tend to just buy what you want. Ryan looked increasingly uncomfortable. Well, we should get going. We have dinner plans. How wonderful! Where are you going? I know all the best restaurants in the city. Crystal's eyes lit up with interest. Just cooking at home, I said firmly. We prefer quiet evenings together. How cozy. Again, she made it sound like an insult. Ryan, you really should let me take you to Antoine's sometime. It's this exclusive French place downtown. I have a standing reservation. As she walked away, clicking her heels on the linoleum floor, I noticed other shoppers staring. Some looked sympathetic, others curious, but all had witnessed my public humiliation. She's really pushing boundaries, I told Ryan as we continued shopping. She's just enthusiastic about business, he replied, but he looked troubled too. I'll talk to her about maintaining professional boundaries. But Crystal wasn't interested in professional boundaries. The restaurant incident proved that beyond any doubt. Ryan had promised me dinner at Luigi's, our favorite little Italian place where we'd had our first date. It wasn't fancy, but the food was delicious and the atmosphere was warm and romantic. We were settled into our usual corner booth, sharing breadsticks and talking about our plans for the weekend when I spotted her. Crystal was seated 3 tables away, dining alone but clearly watching us. She was wearing a stunning red dress that hugged every curve, and she'd positioned herself so she had a perfect view of our table. Ryan, I said quietly, don't look now, but Crystal is here. He turned around despite my warning, and Crystal immediately waved and smiled. She said something to her waiter, and suddenly a bottle of expensive champagne appeared at our table. "Compliments of the lady in red," the waiter said with a knowing smile. Before we could protest, Crystal was gliding over to our table. "I hope you don't mind. I saw you two lovebirds and just had to send over something special, Dom Perignon 2012, one of my favorites." "Crystal, this is really unnecessary," Ryan said, clearly uncomfortable. "We were having a private dinner." "Of course. Don't mind me, I'm just enjoying a quiet meal myself." She lingered beside our table, making no move to return to her seat. "This place is so authentic. Very different from the places I usually frequent, but charming in its own way." The backhanded compliment hung in the air like smoke. Other diners were starting to stare at the beautiful blonde woman making a scene in their quiet neighborhood restaurant. "Brenda, that's such a pretty dress," Crystal continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I love how you make simple things work for you." Not everyone can carry off expensive designer pieces. It takes a certain kind of confidence. I was wearing my favorite blue dress, one that Ryan had always loved, but under Crystal's scrutiny it suddenly felt cheap and plain. "Thank you," I managed through gritted teeth. "Ryan, you simply must come see my new yacht next week. I'm having a little gathering for some business associates, senators, CEOs, that sort of crowd. It would be excellent networking for you." "I'm not really the yacht party type," Ryan said diplomatically. "Oh, but you should broaden your horizons. Success requires mixing in the right circles." Crystal's eyes flicked dismissively toward me. "Of course, I understand if you have obligations that keep you from expanding your social circle." The implication was crystal clear. I was holding Ryan back from his true potential. Finally, she returned to her table, but she spent the entire rest of our dinner staring at us and making phone calls loud enough for us to overhear snippets about major business deals and exclusive opportunities. Our romantic dinner was ruined, and we left early with barely touched plates and heavy hearts. "This has to stop," I told Ryan in the car. "She's not just interested in business, and you know it." "I know," he admitted quietly. "I'll handle it, Brenda. I promise." But Crystal wasn't finished with her campaign of humiliation. The church incident was the worst yet. Sunday morning at St. Mary's had always been our peaceful time together. We'd sit in the same pew, hold hands during prayers, and stay for coffee and donuts in the fellowship hall afterward. It was our community, our sanctuary from the stress of daily life. Crystal showed up during the middle of the service, wearing a pristine white dress and hat like she was attending some exclusive social event. She slipped into the pew directly behind us, and I could feel her presence like a cold shadow. During the passing of peace, when everyone turned to greet their neighbors, Crystal tapped Ryan on the shoulder with perfectly manicured fingers. "Peace be with you, Ryan," she whispered, completely ignoring me. "I've been praying for your success." At coffee hour, she cornered us near the donut table. "What a lovely little church," she announced to anyone within hearing distance. "So quaint and traditional. I usually attend the cathedral downtown, they have such a distinguished congregation, but I thought I'd see where Ryan and his wife worship." Reverend Matthews, bless his heart, tried to make conversation. "Are you new to our community, Miss Crystal Montgomery? I'm in business with Ryan here. Commercial development, very exciting projects." She placed her hand on Ryan's arm possessively. "I've been telling him about the opportunities opening up for contractors willing to think bigger." "Brenda's husband has always done beautiful work," Mrs. Chen chimed in supportively. "He built our new back deck last year." "Oh yes, residential work is so humble," Crystal said with that razor smile. "But Ryan has the potential for so much more. Commercial projects, high-rise buildings, luxury developments. The sky's the limit for someone with his talents and the right connections." The message was clear to everyone present. I was holding Ryan back from his true calling, and Crystal was offering him a better future. As we drove home from church, the tension in the car was thick enough to cut with a knife. "She crossed every line today," I said finally. "Coming to our church, touching you, making it sound like we're somehow beneath her notice." Ryan was gripping the steering wheel tightly. I hate this, Brenda. I hate that she's making you uncomfortable, making us fight, but she represents millions of dollars in potential contracts. And what am I supposed to represent? The words came out sharper than I intended. You're my wife. You're everything to me, but this business opportunity is more important than my feelings, than our marriage. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying, Ryan? He was quiet for a long moment. I'm saying I don't know how to handle this without potentially destroying our financial future. I stared out the window at the familiar streets of our neighborhood, feeling like everything solid in my world was shifting beneath my feet. The final confrontation came on Ryan's birthday. I'd planned a small party at our house. Nothing fancy, just our close friends and family celebrating the man I loved. I'd spent days preparing his favorite foods, decorating with photos of our happy memories, making everything perfect. The party was going beautifully. Ryan was laughing with his brother about some childhood prank. Our neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, was telling stories about her garden, and everyone was enjoying the homemade cake I'd stayed up late decorating. Then Crystal arrived. She didn't knock or wait to be invited in. She simply opened our front door like she owned the place and glided into our living room wearing a stunning silver dress that probably cost more than our monthly income. "Surprise!" she called out in a voice that carried over all conversation. "I hope I'm not too late for the birthday celebration." Every head in the room turned toward her. Our guests, mostly working-class folks from the neighborhood, stared at this glamorous creature who'd just invaded our simple home. "Crystal," Ryan said, clearly shocked. We didn't—" "Oh, don't be silly. I wouldn't miss your special day." She was carrying an enormous gift bag and a bottle of champagne that probably cost more than most people's car payments. "I have something very special for you." I felt my face burn with embarrassment as our guests whispered among themselves. This wasn't their world, and Crystal's presence made that abundantly clear. "How thoughtful," I managed to say through clenched teeth. "But this is a family celebration." "Oh, but I feel like family already." Crystal laughed that tinkling laugh. "Ryan and I have been working so closely together." She proceeded to take over the party. She presented Ryan with ridiculously expensive gifts, a Rolex watch, a set of golf clubs that cost more than most people's monthly salary, tickets to exclusive events. Each gift came with a speech about how successful men deserved the finer things in life. Our guests began to look uncomfortable and out of place. Mrs. Wilson made excuses and left early. Ryan's brother started cleaning up without being asked, a sure sign he wanted to escape the awkward situation. By the time the last guest departed, it was just the three of us standing in our living room surrounded by Crystal's expensive gifts and the remnants of my carefully planned party. "Well," Crystal said, settling onto our sofa like she belonged there, "that was lovely. Such interesting people you associate with." "There are friends and neighbors," I said firmly, "people we care about." "Of course, dear. Everyone needs their place in the world." She turned her attention to Ryan. "But speaking of places, I think it's time we had a serious conversation about your future." Ryan looked between Crystal and me, clearly torn. "Crystal, maybe this isn't the best time." "Oh, but it is the perfect time," she interrupted, "because I'm about to make you an offer that will change everything." She stood up and walked to the enormous designer handbag she'd brought with her. From it, she pulled out a thick manila envelope and what looked like a small suitcase. "Brenda," she said, turning to face me directly for the first time all evening, "I think you and I need to have a frank conversation." There was something different about her now. The fake sweetness was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating intensity that made my blood run cold. "We've been dancing around this for weeks, but let's be honest about what's really happening here." She gestured toward Ryan like he was a prize to be won. "I want your husband, not just for business. I want him. And you're standing in my way." Ryan stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "Crystal, that's completely inappropriate. I'm married, I love my wife, and—" She held up a perfectly manicured hand to silence him. "Please, darling, Let the adults talk." The condescension in her voice made me want to slap her, but I forced myself to stay calm. Crystal opened the small suitcase, and my world tilted on its axis. It was filled with cash, more cash than I'd ever seen in one place in my entire life. Neat stacks of $100 bills bound with rubber bands, filling every inch of the case. $100 million, she announced casually, as if she was discussing the weather. "That's what I'm prepared to pay you to divorce Ryan and disappear from his life forever." The room went dead silent. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. "You're insane," Ryan breathed. Crystal's laugh was sharp and bitter. "I'm practical. Brenda here is a lovely little housewife, but she's holding you back from your true potential. With me, you could have everything: wealth, power, connections, luxury, beyond your wildest dreams." She turned back to me, and for the first time since I'd met her, I saw her real face. No more fake smiles or pretend politeness. This was pure, cold ruthlessness. "Look at this place," she sneered, gesturing around our comfortable but modest home. "Look at your life. You work at a community center making probably $30,000 a year. You shop with coupons and worry about grocery bills. You wear discount store dresses and drive a car that's 10 years old." Every word hit like a physical blow, because they were all true. "Now look at what I'm offering." She gestured to the money. $100 million. You could travel the world, live anywhere you want, never work another day in your life. All you have to do is sign these divorce papers and walk away. She pulled out legal documents from the manila envelope. "I've had my lawyers draw everything up. Very generous terms. You get the money, Ryan gets his freedom to become the man he's meant to be, and everyone wins. Except that Ryan doesn't want to be with you." I found my voice, though it came out shakier than I would have liked. Crystal's smile turned vicious. "Oh, sweetheart, you really don't understand how the world works, do you? Men like Ryan, successful, ambitious, handsome men, they don't stay with small-town girls forever. Eventually they realize they can do better." She moved closer to Ryan, her voice becoming seductive. "Think about it, darling. No more worrying about money, no more small jobs and penny pinching. We could build an empire together. I have connections you can't even imagine. Politicians, celebrities, billionaires. We could travel to Paris, Monaco, anywhere your heart desires." "I don't want any of that," Ryan said firmly. But I caught the brief flicker in his eyes when she mentioned never worrying about money again. "Everyone wants financial security," Crystal pressed. "Everyone wants to live without limitations. And face it, what can Brenda offer you that I can't offer better?" The question hung in the air like poison. What could I offer? I wasn't glamorous or sophisticated. I couldn't take him to yacht parties or introduce him to senators. I couldn't write him $100 million checks or fly him around in private jets. "She can offer me love," Ryan said quietly, but even he sounded less certain than before. "Love?" Crystal laughed harshly. "Love doesn't pay for your children's college education. Love doesn't secure your retirement. Love doesn't build the life you deserve." She turned back to me, and her mask slipped completely. "Take the money, you pathetic little nobody. Take it and get out of here before I decide to destroy you both instead." "And if I don't?" I managed to ask. Crystal's smile was pure evil. "Then I'll make your lives a living hell. I have more lawyers than you can imagine, more money than you can spend in 10 lifetimes, and absolutely no scruples about using both. I can destroy Ryan's business, get you fired from your precious little job, make sure you never work in this town again." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "I can make you wish you'd never been born. So take the money while I'm still feeling generous." The threat was real, and we all knew it. Crystal had the resources to follow through on every word she'd spoken. For a moment, I felt completely defeated. She was right about everything. I was just a small-town woman with a simple job and simple dreams. What did I have to fight someone like her with? Then I remembered something I'd been keeping secret even from Ryan, waiting for the right moment to share it. "You know what, Crystal?" I said, my voice growing stronger. "You're absolutely right about one thing. Money does matter in this world. I walked to the kitchen and picked up my phone. Crystal watched with amusement, probably thinking I was calling a lawyer or maybe the police. "Hi, Jennifer," I said into the phone. "It's Brenda. I need you to bring that bag we discussed." "Yes, tonight. Thank you." I hung up and turned back to Crystal, who was looking puzzled but not worried. "Who's Jennifer?" Ryan asked. "My attorney," I replied. "Well, one of them." Crystal snorted with laughter. "Oh, please, Brenda." "Your attorney? What's she going to do? File a restraining order? I have the best legal team money can buy." "Actually," I said calmly, "Jennifer handles my trust fund." The words hit the room like a thunderbolt. Both Crystal and Ryan stared at me in complete shock. "Your what?" Ryan whispered. "My trust fund. The one I inherited from my grandmother when I turned 25. The one I've been keeping secret because I wanted to make sure I married someone who loved me for me, not for my money." Crystal's confident smirk was beginning to fade. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Jennifer will be here in about 10 minutes with the documentation and a little demonstration of what real wealth looks like." The next 10 minutes were the longest of my life. Crystal kept insisting I was lying, but I could see the doubt creeping into her eyes. Ryan just sat in stunned silence, staring at me like I'd grown a second head. When the doorbell rang, I felt a surge of satisfaction. Jennifer stood on our doorstep with her briefcase and 2 large security guards carrying what looked like a small trunk. "Good evening, Brenda," Jennifer said professionally. "I brought what you requested." The guards carried the trunk into our living room and set it down in front of Crystal. Jennifer opened it with a flourish. If Crystal's suitcase had been impressive, this was absolutely stunning. The trunk was filled with neat stacks of cash, but these stacks were bigger, cleaner, and more numerous than anything Crystal had brought. $200 million, I announced calmly, "my monthly allowance from the trust." Crystal's face went white as a sheet. "The trust itself is worth approximately $8 billion, Jennifer added helpfully. "Brenda is one of the wealthiest women in the state, though she chooses to live modestly." I reached into the trunk, grabbed several stacks of money, and threw them directly at Crystal's face. The bills scattered around her like confetti. "Get out of my house," I said, my voice deadly calm. "Get out of my town, get out of my life, and don't ever come back." Crystal stumbled backward, money sticking to her expensive dress, her perfect hair mussed, her composure completely shattered. This isn't possible," she stammered. "Oh, but it is." I threw more money at her. "You see, Crystal, there's something you never understood. Real class, real confidence, real power, they don't come from flashing your wealth around and trying to buy people." More money flew through the air, hitting her face and chest. "Real power comes from knowing who you are and being secure in that knowledge. It comes from choosing love over money, family over status, genuine relationships over bought loyalty." Crystal was backing toward the door now, but I wasn't finished. "You thought you could buy my husband because you thought I was just some poor little nobody who couldn't compete with your money. But here's what you never realized. I had more money than you all along. I just never needed to use it to buy love or respect or happiness." I grabbed one final handful of cash and threw it at her retreating form. "Now get out. And if I ever see you near my husband again, I'll buy your company just to fire you from it." Crystal fled through our front door without another word, leaving her suitcase of money behind. Through the window, I watched her stumble to her expensive sports car and drive away into the night. Ryan stood in the middle of our living room, surrounded by scattered cash and expensive gifts, staring at me like he'd never seen me before. $8 billion, he said finally. "Give or take," I replied, suddenly feeling exhausted. "And you never told me?" I sat down heavily on our couch, our comfortable, ordinary couch in our comfortable, ordinary house. "I wanted to be sure you loved me for me. I've seen what money does to people, how it changes relationships. I wanted what we had to be real." Ryan sat down beside me, careful not to step on the money scattered across our floor. "It was real, Brenda. It is real." I love you whether you have $8 or $8 billion. I know that now, I said softly. But I needed to know it then, when we first met. And I needed to know it tonight, when Crystal was offering you everything I thought I couldn't give you. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, surrounded by the chaos of the evening, but finally at peace. So, what happens now? Ryan asked eventually. I looked around at the money on our floor, at Crystal's abandoned suitcase, at the expensive gifts she'd tried to use to buy my husband's affection. Now we clean this up, and tomorrow we go back to our normal lives. I'll keep working at the community center because I love it. You'll keep building beautiful homes for people because that's who you are, and we'll be happy with what we have because what we have is real. And the money? The money will be there if we ever need it, but we don't need it to be happy. Ryan smiled and took my hand. I love you, Brenda, my simple, complicated $8 billion wife. I love you too, I replied, my honest, hard-working, completely wonderful husband. As we started cleaning up the mess Crystal had left behind, I reflected on everything that had happened. Sometimes the greatest wealth isn't in your bank account, it's in the people who love you for who you really are. And sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's showing someone that no amount of money can buy what you have naturally. Crystal learned that lesson the hard way, and she'd never forget the night a simple woman threw her own money back in her face and sent her running into the darkness where people like her belong. Sometimes the quiet ones have the biggest surprises. If you enjoyed watching a bully get what she deserved, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Have you ever had to deal with someone who thought money made them better than you? Share your story in the comments. Remember, true class can't be bought.